What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we are going to go over the top 5 books that impacted my life. I stole this idea from my friend Jordan over at First Line Library. I thought it was such a cool video idea. And then when I started going through my list and picking the books, it was actually a little bit difficult. First 4 were easy, but the 5th one took me a little bit. And so these are not necessarily my top 5 favorite books of all time. But what these are is, if my house was on fire and I could only grab 5 books, it would be these 5. And so I'm going to start with The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, not just The Count of Monte Cristo, but this copy. As you can see, it's got some road wear on it. Now, this was the first thing that I bought with real adult money. So when I got a job at 16 years old at the movie theater and I got my first check, this is what I purchased. I think it was like $6 or $7, but I carried this around with me everywhere. Now, I've actually read through the first half of this book twice and am currently reading through this book with my wife. But part of the reason why I haven't finished it is because I don't want it to be over. I know that sounds silly, but I love this book so much, and I love the setting and the story so much that I really don't want it to be over, but I am going to finish it this time. But particularly this copy, because I had it with me in my backpack when I go to school or in my backpack when I go to work, and I would just pick it up periodically. Now, this is one of those books that is not necessarily an easy read, and I do not recommend it to everybody because it's a more challenging read. But when you get pulled into the setting and the plot, it's hard to get pulled out of it. So I like to have some time set aside where I can really dive into this without being pulled out of this. But particularly this copy, because this was something that I could always reach for and pick up at any given moment. So yeah, The Count of Monte Cristo, particularly this copy, is book number 5 on the list. So book number 4 is going to be Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, of all of the Harry Potter books, this one is probably my favorite. It's either this one or Half-Blood Prince. But as far as meaningful or a meaningful impact, this book takes the cake by far. I remember having to read for AR points in my school, for those of you who know what that is. And I had already read the first 3 books. I'd picked this book up because I only had to read this book, and it covered like 2 or 3 months worth of reading for me if I finished it. The problem is that I had not finished it until the day before. So the day before, I think maybe I had read like a chapter or 2, and it might not have even been that much. I think I may not have even started. I kept putting it off and kept putting it off, to the point to where the day or the night before I get home from school and I picked it up and I finished this in a day, finished this in an evening. And that brings back such memories, but it wasn't because I was trudging through it. I really thought I was going to have to, but when I picked it up and I started reading through it, I was pulled into the story that I didn't want anybody to bother me. I didn't want anybody coming into the room and disrupting my reading. I didn't want anybody, I don't even think I ate dinner that night because I was so pulled into this story. So much so that after I took my little test the next day, I picked the book back up and I reread it immediately after, so that way I wouldn't miss anything. And I loved it more the second time. This book, to me, had such a big impact on me because this is one of the books that I could dive into where if things were going on at home and I needed some escapism, I needed to escape into a new world, this was the one that I was looking for. So Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, to me, takes the cake of all of them. And so that's why it is book number 4 on this list. Book number 3 on this list is sort of a cheat because I've actually got 2. And it's going to be The Fellowship of the Ring and The Hobbit, but specifically these copies. Again, it's not necessarily the story. The story does matter, but it is these books in particular. I'll start with Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. As you can see, this has quite a bit of wear on it because I picked this up at the book fair when I was in school right before the movie came out and had read through some of it. And for those of you that read Fellowship, you know that it is definitely not an easy read for a 5th grader. And so that's how I picked this book up as a 5th grader, and I started reading it. And first of all, I absolutely love these covers. These might be my favorite. The movie covers might be my favorite covers of the Lord of the Rings. And I know that's a hot take, but I absolutely loved this book. And it was, again, one of those that I could dive into and I kept in my room at all times. But the other one is this copy of The Hobbit. Now, again, you can see I have had this book since I was 8 years old, and it even has my name. I even put my name right here for some weird reason, but that's what I did. And this was one of those books that I could always gravitate towards. And I've read this book. I've probably read this book 7 or 8 times. It is so fantastic. I also recommend the audiobook, but in particular, it's this copy. And I will never get rid of these copies of these 2 books because they mean so much to me. It's what really sparked my love for fantasy. I mean, I already loved the dragons and wizards and those kinds of things. You know, I grew up with Pokemon and Dragon Ball and all that kind of stuff. And so I was the nerdy kid, and these were the books that I would always gravitate towards. And these were the books that got me started into picking up other fantasy novels. So The Hobbit, this copy of The Hobbit, and this copy of The Fellowship of the Ring, because I've had them for over 20 years at this point. All right, book number 2 on this list is going to be one that has a lot of personal meaning to it. And some of you may giggle or whatever, but it is this copy of Spider-Man. This is the novelization of the first Tobey Maguire movie. This copy in particular, this was the first book that I ever bought with my own money. Now, I'm not talking about like with, real adult money like I did with Count of Monte Cristo, but I had saved up some money, some snack money over the course of a few weeks because I knew the book fair was coming into town, and I bought the novelization of the Spider-Man movie. This copy in particular, I will absolutely never get rid of. This is one that I would save in a fire because I had this book under my bed for 10 years probably. And anytime I would get in trouble, anytime I would get grounded from the television or from video games, anytime there was some less than savory things going on in my home, I could run to my room, close the door, and pull this book out. And I've never finished it. I've never finished it, and I deliberately don't want to. Every time I've picked this book up, it's been when I've had to go to my room for some reason, and I start at page 1, and I see how far I get. And like I said, I've never finished it, and it's for that purpose. When I see this book, it brings back all kinds of memories. It brings back joyous memories, those memories you have as a kid when you think, anything is possible. Anybody can become a superhero. That wonder is still in your mind, that sense of wonder and magic and nobility that is steeped into all of us. I still remember Aunt May's comment where she says,
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride, even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams.
And this book brings that to memory every time. But when I see this book, not all of those memories are good. As a matter of fact, I would say the vast majority of them are not. But this was the book that I would pick up anytime I had to go to my room for whatever reason. I would start at page 1 and I'd see how far I got. I think I almost finished it one day. There's 300 pages in here. I think there's 304 pages in here. And I made it to page 280 one time and stopped deliberately because I didn't want to finish it. And so of all of my physical books that I have, with the exception of one, this would be the book that I would save if my house was on fire. So yeah, it's a weird pick, but the novelization of the first Spider-Man movie is book number 2 on this list. And finally, the number 1 book that has had the biggest impact on my life is going to be The Two Dragons, written by my baby girl a couple of years ago. This book was so thoughtful and kind, and she worked so hard on this. I still need to get it laminated so it doesn't get ruined. But she spent, I think, weeks, if not months, working on this. And this was a Christmas present for me a few years ago. And so she wrote me an entire story about an entire fantasy story because she knew that I loved magic and wizards and dragons, elves. And so she wrote me this story about these two dragons. And so if there's only one book that I could save if my house is on fire, it would be this one. Just because, of the dad stuff, the things my kids do for me and give to me, for the most part, I genuinely cherish until they bring me 800 pages of coloring pages that they just want me to have. Then I make them pick out of those which ones they want me to keep. But out of all of the books, this one was the most meaningful because she really spent a lot of hard work, time, effort, and energy into doing this just for me because she knows that I love fantasy books. And so, yeah, this book to me is the most meaningful of all the books that I own, of everything on both shelves. This one right here is my absolute favorite. So guys, that's the top 5 books that had some sort of meaningful impact on my life. Let me know, what are yours down in the comment section below. As a matter of fact, I would love to see some of you guys make a video and post it. I'd love to see what those books are. But yeah, leave me a comment down below. What are some books that had an impact on your life, and let me know why. I love talking to you guys. So leave me a comment down below, and I can't wait to talk to you guys there. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support, and I will see you on the next one.